Okay, I'm going to get started by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Khap, Sawadee Khap. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see you guys this morning. Welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we start with meditation, and then we move into studying the teachings of the Buddha as a study group. I'll explain to you guys what that is after we do our meditation. We're going to start with meditation, and the way that we start with meditation is I ease into meditation with some chanting. This is the Pali chanting that has been done throughout history, and during the lifetime of the Buddha, they did chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that during his lifetime, he taught oral. There weren't books and audiobooks and podcasts and YouTube videos and things like this 2,500 years ago. So they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. And if you guys would like to join in the chants, we have laminated sheets over there on the table that have the Pali chants, and there's English translations so that you can see the English translations as well. I'm going to use these in order to ease into the meditation. But just understand that this isn't a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. There's nothing mystical or magical about chanting or the teachings of the Buddha. Instead, it's just to help ease the mind into meditation. But originally, they were used to help commit the teachings to memory. And if you get one of these laminated sheets, you'll see the English translations that there's a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha. So I suspect his students probably created these chants either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't go around teaching people to chant to him. But I'm going to use these chants to ease into meditation, and you guys are welcome to chant along if you like. Then once we get into meditation, I will provide some guidance, just some light guidance just to get you started. Then there'll be a period of time it'll just be quiet. We'll just be meditating together. Everyone here and everybody online will just all be meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then from there, I'll start the class and kind of help you guys get headed in the direction of learning the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so if you guys would like to take a position, either seated, lying, standing, walking, these are the 4 positions that the Buddha taught in. Most people are usually learning in the seated position. I see all you guys are sitting on the floor. You can actually sit on the floor in a chair. There's many different ways to position your body, because you can't sit in the same body. You can't be in the same position, repeatedly. So this position that you're sitting in is impermanent. At some point, you're not going to be able to sit in this position potentially. But because you're learning in the seated position, let me share some guidance to help you. That usually you sit with your legs lightly crossed rather than having them real tight, because if your legs were really tight, it would impede the circulation. So you'd like to just have your legs lightly crossed. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, off the cushion, because this gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. The Buddha put his right hand over his left and his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you would like to use this, you can, but not everybody's going to find that comfortable. This path, this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. So some people might choose to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees or their palms up. You might even just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. It's whatever's comfortable for you. You can choose for yourself whatever you find to be comfortable. That goes with the sitting position and the hands and arms and everything. You might even decide to get a chair. And if you get a chair, you might sit with your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can find whatever's comfortable for you. Some people sit cross-legged in a chair like what I'm doing. This is just a traditional Thai chair, and I'm just sitting cross-legged in this particular chair. So you find whatever's comfortable for you with the body. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic or complacent. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the upper body erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, your mind can be attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is an active, dedicated, purposeful training of the mind, and you'd like to have your mind be actively involved in the actual training. So having your sternum up and your shoulders back will allow your mind to be attentive, but it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So feel free to sit with your upper body erect if you like. So again, I'm going to ease into meditation with some chanting, and then from there I'll come back with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakavanhang Apivatemi สวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวาปมานุสนังโหโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังภาควันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online. Sawadee Kap. Good morning. Nice to see all of you guys here. This is our Pali Canon and English study group where each Saturday we get together at 9 a.m. here at the temple, and 9 p.m. I actually teach the same class from home, from the home studio, and live stream it, that we study the original words of the Buddha. And this is a 1.5-year program where we have a book series here that's 13 books. And in the Pali Canon and English study group, we study volumes 2 through 13, and we take 10 chapters a week and we study these as a study group, versus other programs where they're more foundational programs where I'm teaching in a more traditional way, where I'm just kind of teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes and opening up to questions, and teaching another 15, 20, 30 minutes and opening up to questions. That's more of like a foundational type program. And tomorrow on Sunday and Wednesday is when I teach those. And then we have various courses and retreats throughout the month where I also teach the foundational teachings. In this particular program, students will usually move into this after they've already established a foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. But if this is your first time coming to the temple, first time coming here, it's okay. You'll learn plenty today, but just understand that the way I'm teaching you today, it's not the traditional style of learning. It's not typically where somebody will actually start in their journey to enlightenment, but instead, usually students kind of move into this program after they've already established a certain foundation. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're actually starting this new book. It's called Generosity. This is volume 13. So we're coming all the way to the end of this Pali Canon English study group. We're going to be starting it all the way from the beginning, an entire 1.5 years. This is part of the Words of the Buddha, the Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden Book series. And we're studying chapters 1 through 10 today. And the way that we do this is I have these chapters here where I open up to anybody who would like to volunteer to read the chapter. These chapters, you can see, this one's just a paragraph. What you have here is you have the original words of the Buddha from his lifetime. What the Pali Canon is it's 45 volumes of books that are this large, and this is the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha that we have from his own words during his lifetime. And when you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, you're learning them, you're examining them, you're investigating them, you're then reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them in order to bring them into your life and transform your mind. Essentially, what the Buddha did is he discovered these pollutions that are in your mind, and he provided the tools and techniques of how to eliminate them. And when you eliminate these pollutions out of your mind, you'll notice that your mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently, that you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing them. So this enlightenment, it's a mental state that you attain in this life, or you can also attain it at death as well. But if you attain enlightenment during your lifetime, it's not a mystical, magical thing. It's not an instantaneous thing. You can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. Meditation is needed in order to get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. You would need to meditate and do a certain amount of that, but you need other teachings as well. And this is why a teacher will teach you the teachings of helping you to understand your mind, helping you to understand the natural laws of existence around you. The teachings of the Buddha, they're not a bunch of beliefs, and that if you believe these things, then something good's going to happen when you die. Instead, he's sharing teachings with you to train your mind now in this life. And as you train your mind in this life, you'll notice the peace and the joy coming into your mind and into your life because you're eradicating certain pollutions from your mind. So not only is your mind peaceful and joyful, but you experience the focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory, because your mind is now performing optimally because you have eliminated these pollutions from the mind. You'll notice your personal and professional relationships will really blossom because you're not being harsh and bitter and hostile in your relationships anymore. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we think that the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings are being caused by somebody else. You might think that your mom is making you angry, or your brother is frustrating you, or your boss is annoying you, or something like this. But it's actually nothing external that's causing these discontent feelings. What's actually causing these feelings is inside your own mind. But in the unenlightened state, the individual will lack wisdom to understand what's the true cause of these discontent feelings. So therefore, you keep experiencing these feelings over and over and over and over again. It's like being stuck in a constant cycle where the same things keep reoccurring over and over and over and over again because you haven't cultivated the wisdom you need to eradicate these from the mind. So as you train your mind, you're cultivating wisdom. It's not about a bunch of beliefs. It's not rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. It's not anything mystical or magical. Instead, you're gradually training your mind on this path to uproot certain pollutions. And as you do, this is where you'll experience the peace and joy. The primary problem that the Buddhists discovered is this lack of wisdom or this unknowing of true reality, the ignorance or delusion, confusion, misunderstanding. This is what's causing the mind to experience the challenges and difficulties that you experience in the world. When you're struggling and having difficulties in life, it's just because you lack certain wisdom. You haven't cultivated the wisdom that you need to be able to overcome that obstacle. And then there's something called craving and anger in the mind as well. What craving is, or desire or attachment, it's wants and expectations, the longing, the yearning, that if the mind gets what it wants, it gets the pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger and sadness and frustration and irritation and guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety. These are very painful to experience. So one of the things you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. The mind thinks in the unenlightened state, if I can just get that boyfriend or girlfriend, everything in my life life will be perfect. That's what I need, is a boyfriend or girlfriend. Or when you get that, you feel happy for a period of time, and then after a while you feel angry and you feel frustrated because you're not getting what you want. Or you say, oh, I know what I want. I need more money. That's what is going to make my life better. Let me get more money. Let me chase after that for a while. So the mind will kind of chase after more money. And eventually you get more money and you're happy for a while, but then that fades away too. And then you're like, oh, I know what I need. I need a new house or a new car or some more jewelry or a new pair of shoes. That's what's going to do it for me. So the mind has this unquenchable thirst, this craving, this desire, this longing, yearning, thinking that something external is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind just keeps chasing after it. And if it gets what it wants, it gets happy. But those feelings of happiness are ultimately displeasing because they're temporary. They arise, they change, and they fade away. And the mind ends up right back in the painful feelings. But by the time you've purified your mind of cravings, desires, attachments, longing and yearning and chasing after things, you'll experience peace and joy because your mind has been purified, and now you're no longer chasing after things. You understand by the time you get to enlightenment that your contentedness and your joy isn't going to come from something external. Sure, you're going to need certain things. You're going to need, maybe a mobile phone and clothes and different things like this, and you're going to need money. But it's when you chase after these things, thinking that they're going to provide some inner fulfillment, that the mind gets confused, and it ultimately ends up experiencing only temporary pleasant feelings, and then it ultimately moves to the painful feelings. So one of the things you're doing, a primary thing you're doing, is training your mind to let go. And this is why we just did that meditation, a breathing mindfulness meditation, is you're training your mind to let go, let go, let go. That when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you're training the mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you'll hold on to things. You'll hold on to things very tightly, and you'll want things to be your way. And when you get things your way, you'll experience the pleasant feelings. But again, those pleasant feelings are only temporary because they're based on some condition. Those feelings arise, change, and fade away. They're impermanent. But if you don't get what you want, you'll experience painful feelings. So you need to learn how to pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest based in wise decision making, rather than craving, desire, attachment. In the unenlightened state, we typically only know how to get things and pursue things out of craving, desire, attachment. We don't know how to pursue things in the middle way, which is through wise decision making. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is there to help you train your mind to let go, let go, let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation you needed to let go, this is great. This is very helpful for you. The goal isn't to stay on the breath the entire time. It's actually impossible. You won't be able to ever stay on your breath the entire time during your meditation. You're going to have a thought, and it's going to move off your breath. But then you just train your mind to let it go. So even when you're enlightened, you're going to have occasional thoughts during your meditation. But what you can do is you can quiet the mind and you can still the mind. In the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts where you'll have thought during your meditation. And this is very common, but as you get more and more training, you'll have longer and longer periods of time of quietness and stillness in your meditation. Or if you were meditating, your mind's currently unenlightened, you might have had a thought, and you might have indulged in that thought and kind of thought about it and looked at it and followed it. And then 2 or 3 minutes down the road, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back. And you brought your mind back to your breath. So if you experienced any of these two things, you're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind is undisciplined, that it doesn't have the control that it needs in order to be disciplined and controlled. So as you train your mind more, you will get more discipline and more control of the mind. So this meditation, it isn't designed to eliminate your thoughts. It's designed to help you be aware when you have a thought. It's designed to help you have concentration or focus and clarity. And it's designed to help you let go and let go and let go, because it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these discontent feelings. And then this book that we're starting today, which is generosity, this practice of generosity is also to help your mind let go. It's to train your mind to let go. This is the reason why we practice generosity, where we're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation. That if you just had craving, desire, attachment, you're going to tend to hold on to things very tightly. You're going to be very selfish. My money, my phone, my computer, my clothes, my jewelry, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my mom, my dad. Everything's mine, 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 mine. And the mind's going to hold on to this very tightly. And then when these things are changing, because everything around you is impermanent, you're going to struggle. If you hold on to your money very tightly, well, when you have your certain bank account balance, you'll be happy. But when it goes down, you're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated because your bank account balance went down. And if you're holding on to your money really tightly, this is what's going to produce that. Because of the craving, the clinging, holding on to your money, your mind's going to be sad and frustrated when your bank account goes down. So we practice generosity, where we give and share our money in certain situations, and this trains your mind to let go and not to hold on to things and be selfish. But you can also practice generosity with food and clothing and your time and your effort and your energy and things like this. You can give things away and you can share with other people, because in the unenlightened state, when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you'll tend to do things that are only self-pleasing. You'll look out and chase after your own selfish desires, that everything has to be fulfilling for you, that you aren't necessarily interested in helping other people with things, because the mind is trying to get its desires fulfilled. So it becomes oftentimes very selfish. But when you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, like your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources, and you do this without any expectation of anything in return, then this will train your mind to let go. It'll train your mind to not be selfish. So for example, if you're walking into a store and you open the door and you hold the door for somebody, this is generosity. This is sharing your time, your effort, your energy, your resources more than is strictly required, without any expectation of anything in return. And this will help you. This is just a small act of generosity. But you need to be careful that you do this without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there holding the door and you're expecting somebody to say thank you, and they don't say thank you to you, you'll be upset. You'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated and annoyed. Right? Because of your expectation. It's not possible for everybody to say thank you to you when they walk through the door. That would be permanence. But the fact is that everything around you is impermanent. You're never going to experience permanence in terms of all these things around you in your day-to-day life. That some people are going to say thank you when you're holding the door, and some people aren't. And that's okay. That's the universal truth of impermanence. If you're practicing pure generosity, you're not doing it because you want something. You're not holding the door because you want something. If you're practicing pure generosity, you're doing it because you realize it enhances your mind. It's helping you to eliminate selfishness. So if you're holding the door, you should just hold the door because it's a wise decision, not because you want something. Or if you share your money with somebody, in terms of like donating money to a charity or something like this, it would be wise to do that without any expectation of anything in return. Or if you share your time or effort or energy or your clothing or your jewelry or anything else, you should do that without any expectation of anything in return. And that's what's going to enhance your mind. As soon as you put an expectation in there that you want something back for this generosity, there's a craving, there's a desire, there's attachment, and you're not going to always get what you want. Because of impermanence, you're not going to always get what you want. So if you attach an expectation or a want or a longing or a yearning to your generosity, you're just sabotaging yourself. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. Because at some point, when you're practicing generosity, in some cases, you're going to get back what you want and you'll be happy. But in some cases, you're not going to get what you want. And you're going to be sad and you're going to be frustrated and agitated. So if you have an expectation along with your sharing, this isn't generosity. It's not yet fully purified generosity. You need to eliminate any and all expectations from your generosity in order for it to actually be pure generosity. So that's a little bit of like a heads up about what this book is all about. The Buddha is going to give you many different teachings in his own words about generosity and how to practice generosity. Now, while this book is actually book 13 of the entire book series, someone might assume that somehow generosity isn't important, but it's highly important for your practice. If it wasn't for generosity, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Just like meditation, that you're going to need to practice breathing mindfulness meditation in order to get to enlightenment. And there's other teachings that you need in order to get to enlightenment too. but generosity is so important to be able to get to enlightenment. An enlightened being is not going to be selfish. They're not going to be just following the things that they want to do and just doing things selfishly that are self-pleasing and self-satisfying for themselves. An enlightened being is going to be very interested in seeing other people experience beneficial results too. So while you understand on this path to enlightenment that this is your own journey, this is your own journey to enlightenment, you understand that and you see that more and more as you progress on the path to enlightenment. A teacher is here to guide you and show you the way, but it's your journey to enlightenment. But even though it's your journey to enlightenment and you're in this life essentially by yourself, you start to learn this interconnectivity that we have among other beings, that any decision we make, it's going to affect other beings. And whenever we make a harmful decision, that harm is going to come back to us. If we're harming somebody, if we're injuring them physically, mentally, if we're harming them in terms of their material possessions or their reputation or something like this, that harm is going to come back to us. So while we're on our own independent journey in life and we need to cultivate wisdom and make wise decisions to improve our life, any decision we make and we put out into the world, it's going to affect other people. And we can make harmless decisions or we can make harmful decisions. It's our choice. But with a lack of wisdom, which the unenlightened mind has, you will tend to make harmful decisions in some situations without even realizing that you're causing harm. For example, if you've been in arguments where you're bitter and harsh and hostile to people, you might feel justified in your anger and that this person deserves your anger. But in reality, your anger is being caused by your own mind. And any bitterness and harshness and hostility that you're putting out, it's just going to come back to you. But in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, you'll firmly believe that you're justified in that anger. And you'll firmly believe that somebody else is causing you to be angry. So as you learn to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and you train your mind to do so with breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, you'll notice your anger decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And you need other teachings too, like loving kindness meditation and other things like this to eliminate your anger. But as you understand what the real problem is through the teachings of the Buddha and you start applying the real solution, then you'll actually see real results. But if you don't understand the problem, which the very first thing that you learn on the path to enlightenment is the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is called the Four Noble Truths. If you start any of the foundational programs, you start with the very first teaching where in 4 simple statements, you can understand what's causing your discontent feelings, and you can independently verify it. Right now, as I mentioned, you might firmly believe that other people annoy you or that other people make you frustrated, but I can give you 100% certainty that it's your own mind that's causing this. And if you come to class tomorrow, which is Sunday morning at 9 a.m. or Sunday evening, or you listen to any of the recordings or the books or the audiobooks that I share, it's all available at no cost. You can learn the Four Noble Truths, and you can learn how your mind is causing these feelings. Because what you'll tend to do when you don't understand the Four Noble Truths is when you get angry or you experience painful feelings, is you will tend to push people away. This is called aversion. You will push people out of your life. And you think that this is solving the problem, but it doesn't solve the problem, because when you push people out of your life, it's only a matter of time before you get angry or irritated or annoyed again. It's just a matter of time. That if this was the real problem or the cause of the problem, when you push that person out of your life, you wouldn't get angry anymore. But when you push that person out of your life, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. So that should show you that this isn't the real cause of the problem. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people. And when you do that, that doesn't solve the problem either, because then you just have broken relationships and people choose to leave out of your life. So as long as you keep being bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, you're going to keep experiencing broken relationships over and over. And people are going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile with you. Or the third thing you might do when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, and you misunderstand the problem, is you might put your expectations on people. You might try to control people and pressure them to do things your way. And this is what the unenlightened mind does, is it'll push people away. It'll push a situation away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, or you'll put your expectations on people. And this is all coming from its lack of wisdom, or this ignorance or unknowing of true reality, which allows craving to continue in the mind, this longing and yearning. So this anger continues to arise. So this book about generosity, while it's the 13th book, and we're going to talk about giving and generosity by learning the teachings of the Buddha, it's to help guide you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. It wasn't to enrich the Buddha. The Buddha was already rich. He was a prince destined to become a king. He had plenty of money. He stepped away from the royal palace. He left the royal family and went into this life of homelessness where he wore rag robes and he just accepted donations from people of food in order to provide support for him to sustain his life. So he would accept food, he would accept shelter, he would accept clothing, and he would accept medical care. These are the 4 things that he would accept. He didn't even accept gold and silver. If someone offered him land, he wouldn't accept it. Or if they offered him animals or slaves or women or things like this, he wouldn't accept any of that stuff. Food, shelter, clothing, and medical care. That's all he accepted, just to sustain his life, right? So when you read these chapters, and we read these today, like this first one talks about wealth and things like this, the goal of the Buddha teaching generosity wasn't to enrich himself. He understood that in order for him to get to enlightenment, this peaceful and joyful mental state, he needed to practice a significant amount of generosity in his current life, but also in his previous lives too. He talks about all this generosity that he was practicing in his previous lives and in his current life too. Even this cycle of rebirth, that we're all being reborn countless times over and over, it can be independently verified. You may not know how to do that right now based on your current wisdom, but there's a way to independently verify that you are experiencing countless rebirths over and over. So the Buddha taught during his previous lives that he practiced a significant amount of generosity, and in his current life, he practiced a significant amount of generosity too. If you can imagine sharing teachings from the age of 35 to 80 for 45 years, where he wasn't interested in anything from his students. He had no expectations of his students. He was only interested in helping them to get to the same mental state that he attained, right? He just made himself available and he explained to you, this is how I did it. This is how I got to this enlightened mental state. This is how I got to the peace and joy that he's now experiencing. So what you're going to be reading here around generosity is you're going to be reading about why it's important to practice generosity. But this, what I just shared with you, is why in a nutshell. It's because it works to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. It eliminates the cause that's producing the discontent feelings. So what I'm going to do here as part of our study group is see if there's any volunteers here that would like to read this. Then after they read it, then I will share some teachings on it. And then I'll open up to any and all questions that you have. Those of you here at the temple, if you would like to volunteer to read a chapter, if you could use the microphones here in this white bowl, there's a gray button. You just press it and then the lights come on. You just wait a second. You hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well, because we have people joining us online. And then for those of you guys that are online, you guys in Facebook, or those of you in Zoom, you can actually volunteer to read too. You can just electronically raise your hand and I'll see that, and you can open up your microphone and then you'll be able to read as well. And those of you guys here at the temple, if you have a microphone or you end up getting a microphone, you can just keep it with you, because you might decide you'd like to read more than one time, or you might have questions or something like that, or somebody around you might need a microphone. So feel free to share the microphones. We have plenty of them around. So let me see if there's any volunteers who would like to read this first chapter, either here at the temple or those of you guys on Zoom. Yes, I have a couple. Yeah, feel free. Yeah, please come get a microphone. We have more chapters too, so whoever reads the first one, you can read the second one or the third one or the fourth one. You can have a seat if you like. Make yourself comfortable. If you'd like to stand, you're welcome to, but don't feel like you have to.
Okay, thank you. Chapter 1, Giving. But here, students, some man or woman gives food, drink, clothing, carriage, garland, scents, ornaments, beds, dwelling, and lamps to ascetics or Brahmins because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body. After death, he reappears in a happy destination, even in the healthy world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is wealthy.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here we have a lot to talk about. Even though this is just one paragraph, we have a lot to talk about. First, what I'll share is that here the Buddha is talking about by practicing generosity on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination, even the heavenly world. The goal of the teachings of the Buddha is not to be reborn in the heavenly world, to not go to heaven. That's not the actual goal. The goal is to get to enlightenment in this lifetime. By getting to enlightenment, your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. All those things that I was talking about. You get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore. No matter what's happening in your life, you can maintain your good mood no matter what. It doesn't matter what's happening in your life. So the goal isn't to actually be reborn in heaven. The beings that are in the heavenly realm, they're still in the cycle of rebirth. They haven't escaped the cycle of rebirth yet. Those beings in the heavenly realm have the opportunity to get to enlightenment, but oftentimes they're complacent because it's so pleasant in the heavenly world that they oftentimes don't learn and practice the teachings to be able to train their mind. So they're oftentimes reborn into other realms. There's 5 realms that the Buddha teaches. He teaches the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. And these 5 realms can all be independently verified based on wisdom that you cultivate. These realms are not in some far distant place. All these beings are in the same time and space. So just like there's a human being sitting in this chair now, when I get up and leave, there could be an animal that comes and sits here, like maybe a cat comes in, or a dog, or a cockroach, or an ant, or something like this. So these beings that are in heaven, sometimes we think about this as like some far distant place. These beings are right here in the same time and space as us, right? So it's not some far distant place. And these beings in the heavenly realm, they still need to get to enlightenment. They're going to be reborn if they don't get to enlightenment. So the ultimate goal isn't to go to heaven, right? So when you just see one teaching like this, if this is the first time you've seen the words of the Buddha, you might think, oh, the goal is to get to heaven. Let me give a lot of gifts so that I can get to heaven. That's not the actual goal. The Buddha is explaining that if you do practice generosity, this will potentially lead to rebirth in the heavenly realm. But when you look at the totality of his teachings, you can see that the ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. But the same things that it takes to get to enlightenment are the same things that if you fall short of enlightenment, there's the potential to be reborn into the heavenly world. But then from that heavenly existence, you still need to get to enlightenment. Here in the human existence, this is the ideal existence to get to enlightenment. Because here we experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. So we tend to have built-in motivation to be able to get to enlightenment because we don't like those painful feelings and we're interested in getting rid of them. So in the human realm, it's the ideal existence to be able to get to enlightenment because we have built-in motivation. In the heavenly realm, they don't experience painful feelings. They only experience pleasant feelings. So they tend to be complacent. They don't have that built-in motivation to get to enlightenment. So being reborn in the heavenly world is not ideal because you still are in the cycle of rebirth. You still need to get to enlightenment. You tend to not have motivation, and you can be reborn in any of the other realms. You can move from heaven down into hell or the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm. But this whole cycle of rebirth is something that you typically learn about 1.5 years, 2 years into your development on the path to enlightenment. This is book 13. So book 11 was about the cycle of rebirth. So that's why you're seeing things like this here. And the Buddha is just saying that, okay, if there's this rebirth, you can be reborn in the heavenly realm. But if you're reborn into the human realm, then there's this potential to be wealthy in the human realm if you've practiced generosity. The reason why he's sharing this with you is that when you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, you're going to experience more and more peace in this life, but there's the potential to be reborn in either in heaven or the human realm. If you're going to be reborn, those are the places you would like to be reborn. Being reborn into the hell, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, you can't actually get to enlightenment from those realms. Those realms, they don't have the ability to cultivate their mind to the level of being able to get to enlightenment. So if you're going to be reborn, it would be heaven or the human realm that you would ideally like to be interested to be reborn into. But the ultimate goal is not to be reborn. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. But should you be practicing generosity and you're eliminating more and more craving out of the mind, there's more and more potential for you to be reborn into the human realm or the heavenly realm. So that's what the Buddha is really talking about here. Here, what he's talking about at the beginning are the types of offerings that are typically given to ordained practitioners or teachers. During his lifetime, an individual would give food, drink, clothing, carriages, which are like vehicles. Like nowadays, we might call it a vehicle. Like a carriage would be like a horse-drawn carriage, right? To take you from one location to the other. Garlands or like, kind of flowers and things like this to kind of, show appreciation and stuff like that. Scents. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't necessarily take a shower every single day the way we tend to do nowadays. So having scents were helpful for you because, you might go a week before you have a shower or a bath, or a week or two. So wearing some kind of scent was helpful that you didn't walk around smelling the way we would probably smell if we didn't take a shower for a week or two, if you've ever done that kind of thing. Ointments are like medicines. Right? Beds are a place to sleep because these people were homeless, that they just walked around and they slept wherever their students would invite them to come live with them in their homes. So that's what beds and dwellings are, is that the students would invite the Buddha and his students into their home, and he would stay right there in the home, in the village, for a week or two or a month or two. And he would be teaching the family, he would be teaching the other villagers, and they would have a place to sleep and a place to stay. Nowadays, we have temples for people to stay. But even still, sometimes students will invite their teacher to come stay with them in their home, because then the teacher can get full insight to what your life is like, and then we can provide you guidance and help to learn the path to enlightenment. Lamps were helpful during the lifetime of the Buddha because they didn't have electricity. So to be able to see things and be able to do things, having light and lamps were very helpful. So these are things that people would offer to ascetics and Brahmins. What an ascetic is someone who's given up their worldly life in order to pursue a life of homelessness, in order to pursue enlightenment. Today, we would refer to an ascetic as an ordained practitioner. During this time frame, they would refer to them as an ascetic, someone who's given up their worldly life and they've entered into this life of homelessness, and now they're looking to try to get to enlightenment. You don't have to do that in order to get to enlightenment. You can get to enlightenment from a household life, but oftentimes during this lifetime, people would ordain, and even nowadays, people ordain. During this lifetime, household life was a lot more difficult than it is today. During that time frame, just to get water in your house was like an all-day thing. Maybe 3 times a week or 2 or 3 times a week, you would need to take these buckets and travel to the well. You would need to fill up the buckets. You would need to travel back to your house, dump them into a bigger container, and now go back to the well, get some more water. And this was like a half a day or a full day thing just to get water in your house. Just to get food, you would have to plant the food, you'd have to grow the food, you'd have to harvest the food, you'd have to prepare the food. Just to get clothing, it was very challenging to get clothing. They have to make their own clothing. Nowadays, we've got all these modern conveniences that we can just walk over to a faucet, open it up, and boom, we've got water instantly in our home. So nowadays, a household practitioner has a much better ability to get to enlightenment than even during the lifetime of the Buddha, because we have so much time. We have so much time available in our life that we tend to fill it up with things that are unbeneficial, whether it's searching social media for hour upon hour, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's other things that we tend to do, partying and drinking and using drugs and things like this. We fill up our time with all this kind of stuff. If we were drinking and using drugs during the lifetime of the Buddha, you wouldn't have the energy that you need to go out there and harvest food, and you wouldn't eat. So not as many people use drugs and alcohol during the lifetime of the Buddha as they do now, because they needed to go out into the world and actually work in order to get food. But nowadays, you have a hangover, you can just stumble down to the restaurant, spend a little bit of money, and you can still get food. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, things were much different for household practitioners. So people would oftentimes go into this life of homelessness in order to get to enlightenment. But nowadays, and even during the lifetime of the Buddha, household practitioners can surely get to enlightenment. But here, the Buddha is referring to these ascetics or ordained practitioners. What a Brahmin is this is a Hindu priest. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there were various people that were teaching and various people doing different things. And the Buddha was born in what we refer to as Nepal, and he taught in northeast India. And during that time frame, there was a lot of Hinduism, and there is today too. And these Hindu priests or Brahmin were essentially born into a certain family, and they were considered to be holy people. This was like a 15% of society. And if you were born into this family, you were considered to be holy, and you were now going to take on this life of being a Brahmin, where you perform rites and rituals and ceremonies in order to what was thought to help the people. People were convinced that they couldn't improve their life, that there was nothing that they could do to improve their life. In order to improve your life, you needed to go see a Brahmin, and you would pay this person money. They would perform a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony, and then your life was supposed to get better. And the Buddha knew that this wasn't true, that the way that you get to a better life is you need to cultivate wisdom. You need to train your own mind. You need to eliminate these pollutions from the mind. And this is what's going to produce better results for you, is that when you have better wisdom, you're going to make wiser decisions, and it's going to produce better results in your life. But when you lack wisdom, you're going to make unwise decisions, and it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So these Brahmin, while they were out there doing these rites and rituals and ceremonies long before the Buddha came along, the Buddha knew that it wasn't actually leading to enlightenment, and people were being convinced to do these things. So there was a little bit of contention between the Buddha and the Brahmin, that the Brahmin were kind of doing these things that was exactly opposite of the teachings of the Buddha. But the Brahmin were also teaching a little bit of moral conduct. They were teaching a little bit of wise decision making. So they would oftentimes learn with the Buddha. They were oftentimes students of the Buddha. But people would oftentimes make offerings to the ascetics, ordained practitioners. They would sometimes make offerings to these Brahmins. And the Buddha is saying, okay, when you're practicing generosity by sharing things with ordained practitioners and these Hindu priests, that this is going to lead to benefit for you, that you're going to experience this improved potential rebirth. But ultimately, the reason why the Buddha taught generosity is to help you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, that it's going to help you improve the condition of your mind, where your mind isn't experiencing the sadness and the anger and the frustration, because you're eliminating this craving, desire, attachment. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter, either here or online? If you're online and you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can also electronically raise your hand. So do you guys have any questions on anything I've been sharing so far up to this point? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you so much for lecture. And my question is the bottom line. So then, wherever he's reborn, he's wealthy. So that refers. So wherever someone reborn, and then he's rich. Mm-hmm. Means that he becomes rich, or he's born in rich family. In that meaning?
Either one of those things can occur, that you can either be born into a rich family, mm-hmm. or you could become rich as part of practicing generosity. But it's not just the generosity that's going to help you to do that, right? So if you just practice generosity, you're not going to instantly get rich, right? This is the whole idea of like, let me give money to the religious organization and somehow I'm going to get rich. This isn't actually what the Buddha is teaching. What's actually happening is that because you're practicing generosity, you're eliminating your craving, desire, attachment, where you're not chasing selfishness. You're not chasing after things through craving, desire, attachment. And then by not having craving, desire, attachment yourself and not being selfish yourself, you're being generous, not just to the Buddha and to his students and to these Brahmin, but you're going to be generous to other people too. This is what generosity does, is that say that you practice generosity towards a temple or towards the Buddha, you're going to also be practicing generosity with your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends, your family, because that's a quality of mind that you're cultivating. What generosity is, it's a certain quality of mind. It's an action, yes, but it's also a certain quality of mind. And it's not just towards the Buddha that you would be practicing generosity towards, but you're going to be practicing generosity with many people. And because of this, you're putting out generosity. Generosity is going to come back to you. That's how an individual's becoming wealthy, is that because of the cause and effect. What the Buddha is teaching you here is the natural law of karma. It's not anything mystical or magical that, hey, if I give money to somebody, I'm automatically going to get money back. It's a cause and effect, that if you practice generosity to the people around you, you will experience people practicing generosity with you. Like, for example, me, like, I share the teachings. I've been sharing the teachings for many years now, just sharing the teachings. I don't have any expectation of anything in return, but people do share with me. People give me money, they give me food, they give me clothing, they give me support, they give me different things. People have taken me to the movies and, done different things with me. And they're like, hey, I would like to show my appreciation for you sharing these teachings. And this isn't because I have an expectation that they would do these things. If I had an expectation, it would come across in the way that I interact with them. And in that situation, when you have craving, people aren't interested to give. But if people can see that you have a pure mind, you have a pure heart, you're truly interested in helping them, you're practicing generosity without any expectation of anything in return, that generosity will come back to you. And this is how you get wealthy. It's your decisions of cause and effect. Whereas if you practice generosity and you went around and you were bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with people, you're not going to become wealthy. People aren't going to necessarily be interested in helping you to become more wealthy if you're bitter, harsh, and hostile and aggressive with people. Of course, there are people in the world who are rich and wealthy who are bitter, harsh, and hostile and aggressive. But in general, the people that I've met that are rich, and like at one time I had a lot of money in my life, I wasn't bitter and harsh and hostile to people. All the people who were supporting me as a business person, I was friendly, I was warm, I was polite, I was respectful, I was generous to them. I would oftentimes give people free things as part of the business that I was functioning in. And because of this, people would give me money. I would spend time helping people. So that's what is actually going to help you, is not just giving gifts, but sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. When I did that as a business person, I became very wealthy. But that's not the ultimate goal, to become wealthy, right? Wealth isn't going to lead to happiness. That money isn't going to lead to your happiness. You need a certain amount of money to sustain your life, but having more money isn't necessarily going to lead to more happiness or more joy, because the joy needs to come internally. You can't create joy from something external.
Thank you. So, first when I read the chapter, then I thought it's kind of conditional situation. So if you give some people so generosity, and so you become wealthy person. But it's not like that. It's kind of a result. So like pay, the concept like pay forward. So
yes.
I got something, and then so pay others people as well. And it's kind of a cycle, like.
Exactly. It's like if you put out bitterness and hostility and harshness, bitterness, hostility, and harshness is going to come back to you. Okay. If you put out generosity is going to come back to you. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you here. He's not teaching you to go out and chase money and that you should aspire to be wealthy necessarily. He's just teaching you this cause and effect, or this action and result. Everything he's teaching you is teaching you this natural law of karma, or you might have heard of the word karma, this cause and effect or action and result. And he's teaching you, hey, when you practice generosity, it's going to lead to improved wealth. But he's not telling you like, hey, go get wealthy, hurry up and go get wealthy, because that's not going to lead to your peacefulness and your joy necessarily. Right? You can't form peace and joy through something external.
It's also it's kind of so natural law. So you pay you pay to the people nice stuff, and then so also it's come back to me as well. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Great discussion. Okay, let me see. We don't have any questions online anywhere. So let's go to the next one. I saw there were some other hands that would like to read. You guys are welcome to read the second chapter here. This one's really short. By the way, what you have here is you have the words of the Buddha. You have the reference. This goes back to the original Pali Canon. So if you are interested to see, is this truly the words of the Buddha? You can go back to the original source, because this is an extract. The Buddha was teaching something before this, and he was teaching something after this. So here, I'm just extracting it so that you can get kind of like a golden nugget. Instead of reading like a 30-minute discourse where the Buddha is teaching many different things, you're getting 1 or 2 or 3 golden nuggets in each one of these little chapters. In some cases, it's a page or 2, but these are just very short. So you've got the original words of the Buddha, you've got the reference, and then you've got words from me to help you reflect on this. And all these books are available at no cost. You can download them for free from our website. You can take them and go print them if you'd like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon in your country. So all these books are available for you that you can learn the original words of the Buddha, and you can learn and grow and develop. I would suggest starting with volume 1. That's the best place to start. But here, these books are designed this way. Volume 1 is a bit different. It more walks you through developing your foundational teachings. It does have some of the words of the Buddha in there, but it really helps walk you through. These books, volumes 2 through 13, it's exclusively the words of the Buddha, then a reference, and then words from me to be able to help you. Okay? So is there someone who would like to read this? Yeah? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you had your hand up before.
What is accomplishment in generosity? And what is accomplishment in generosity? Here, a noble disciple resides at home with a mind free from the stain of selfishness, freely generous, open-handed, joyful in letting go, devoted to charity, joyful in giving and sharing. This is called accomplishment in generosity.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, the Buddha is describing what you need to do in order to develop accomplishment in generosity. And this is how you would get to enlightenment, among other things, is develop accomplishment in generosity. Just to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's 4 stages of enlightenment. It's the 4th stage when you're actually enlightened. But just to get to the first stage of enlightenment, you would need to develop accomplishment in generosity. And what the Buddha is describing here is that you're freely giving, that you're living open-handedly, joyful in letting go. In other words, you've eliminated your selfishness. By the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're not going to be selfish and just looking out to please yourself, that you're going to be willing to give and share. And you're going to see some other teachings from the Buddha here where he's talking about this. And you can experience joy in your giving. This book, it's titled Generosity, but here I've also put kind of a subtitle, Joy of Giving and Sharing. You can really experience a lot of joy. You're not interested in basing your joy on your generosity, but as you're getting rid of craving, desire, attachment, it can be very joyful. If you've ever shared your time, effort, energy, or resources with some charity like an orphanage, or maybe like a dog shelter, or maybe a woman's abuse shelter or something like this, there's a lot of joy in that, knowing that you've done something to help another person and you don't want anything back from them. There's a lot of joy in this. And that's what the Buddha is describing here, is to live open-handedly, eliminating this stain of selfishness. This is the pollution. The mind is holding on to things. It's like a stain, because when you go around being selfish, you're just interested in your own selfish desires, and you would like to eliminate selfishness from your mind. When we're a child, when we're young, we're taught to give and share. We're taught to share our toys, right? Typically, because when we're children, we tend to hold on to our toys. We become very possessive. Or if we have candy, we might hold on to our candy, and our parents teach us to share. They don't teach us why, but they tend to teach us to share. The reason why is because it eliminates craving, desire, attachment. But as we get older, we kind of forget some of those lessons that our grandparents and our parents and our aunts and uncles were teaching us to share. We tend to forget those because our craving sets in. We become adults and we want something. We want that car. We want that house. We want that certain piece of jewelry, and we tend to chase after our own selfish pursuits. So you can understand that giving and sharing is very, very wise. It's going to help your mind and enhance the quality of your mind in significant ways. And you can find many ways to give and share. When you're eating food here in Thailand, we tend to share. All the food tends to go in the middle and we all share. In Western culture and other cultures, we don't necessarily do that. We tend to hoard all the food on our plate, kind of like a wild animal. A wild animal is going to hoard their food, and they're not interested in sharing. When a lion is eating and another lion comes over, that lion that's eating is going to growl and roar and attack that lion. It doesn't want that other lion around. It's going to hoard its food because it's selfish. And this is what the unenlightened human mind will tend to do, is that even though you're in the human realm, your mind is oftentimes functioning like an animal. You're not an animal, you're a human being. But the consciousness, having been reborn many, many times as an animal, tends to function like an animal in the unenlightened state because it's polluted with these pollutions. And this is why you might hoard your food. Or if somebody, if you have a chocolate bar and you have it in the refrigerator, and all day at work, you're thinking about coming home and eating that chocolate bar. And then when you get home, you realize your life partner, your children ate your chocolate bar. You'll probably be angry. You'll be frustrated because you're hoarding things. You need to get to the point where you're willing to give and share to eliminate this selfishness. This is what will eliminate your frustration. Because if you hold on to that chocolate bar and when you come home, it's not there, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated, right? Because your mind's clinging to it and you're craving it. But you need to understand that this chocolate bar is impermanent. You can share it with other people. It's okay. You don't have to hoard it just for yourself. And then if you eat it, fine, you're happy. If you're not eating it, you're fine with that too. You don't need to hoard your food. So if you get in the habit of sharing your food, sharing your clothing, sharing your jewelry, sharing your money and your resources, this will really help you to eliminate that selfishness, that stain of selfishness, which is ultimately going to help you eliminate your anger and your frustration because you're not hoarding things and holding on to things so tightly. So any questions on this chapter? Looks like we have a question coming in on YouTube here. Let's see. And we have one on Zoom as well. Go ahead, Keely. What's your question?
Yes, David. I want to know if a kid doesn't want to share his candy to others, is it okay to guide him for sharing by saying, if you are willing to share, I can buy you more candies? I want to know what's the wise way to guide kid for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very wise, Keely. With my son, he happens to be here today. One of the things that I did as he was growing up and he would have toys is he would ask for new toys. And I wouldn't buy him new toys unless he was willing to give away his old toys. So he doesn't have a mountain of toys in his in the house because as I was buying him new toys, he would give away his old toys. So he would give away like 5 or 6 or 8 different toys to get 1 or 2 new toys. So this is a great way to teach them to give and share. And sometimes we would even buy new toys and we would give them away as well. Or sometimes, like, he used to make popcorn a lot, and he would make popcorn and then he would go around the village and give out popcorn to the other villagers and the other children, right? So yes, you can do exactly what you just said, that if your son has candy or a child that you're taking care of has candy and you would like to invite them to give it away, you can let them know, like, hey, I'll buy you some more, because this teaches them to live open-handedly. This is a great way to do that. And with clothing, you can do the same kind of things as well. This is great early on to teach them to give and share, because as a child, your mind isn't as polluted. When you become older, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, your mind is taking on more and more conditioning. So the more you can train someone when they're a child, the better for them. And you can talk with my son about all the different training that he's experienced over the course of his life, in his short life, and it's really helped him. And he's going to have a very different life than what I had growing up, because growing up I had a lot of difficulties and a lot of problems. But learning these teachings growing up, you can experience so much more benefit. So that would be exactly the way to teach a child growing up. And there's other things you can do too, but that's definitely one of the options.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yes, you're welcome. Jessica on YouTube has a question. If you are reborn into a wealthy family, due to being generous in your past life, what is to say the person will continue to be generous in the next life? Will they remember the teachings somehow? The answer is that being reborn into a wealthy family doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be generous. Someone could be wealthy and also, selfish. But if you have learned the teachings in a particular life, when you're reborn into a new life, yes, there's certain residual memories from those previous lives where you are learning the teachings, and this is going to benefit you. So if you're practicing the teachings in this life and you're practicing generosity in this life with the teachings of the Buddha, if you happen to be reborn, then yeah, you're going to have residual memories of those teachings, and it'll make it easier for you to get to enlightenment in your next life, should you not get to enlightenment in this life. But the ultimate goal would be to get to enlightenment in this life. And you can see this to be true because all the different students who come and learn with me, there's different levels of pollution in their mind. There's some people who have a lot of pollution, very much in the darkness. And there's other people who don't have as much pollution. And as you learn these teachings, as a teacher, I can actually observe this in the student's mind. And oftentimes when students are learning who have very little pollution in their mind, a lot of times the teachings just make sense to them. It's so easy and so straightforward for them to understand the teachings. It's like they have learned them in the past life. And you can experience this for yourself too. Perhaps if the teachings are very straightforward and very easy for you, this could be from residual memories from the past. Whereas if the teachings are very challenging and very difficult for you, and you feel like it's very cumbersome and very hard to learn, this is from the mind being more polluted. And this is most likely because you haven't learned them in a previous life. So being generous in this life doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be generous in the next life. But if you've learned the teachings in this life, for sure, they're going to benefit you in the next life. But not everybody necessarily who is being reborn into a wealthy family has necessarily been learning the teachings of the Buddha in a particular life. Great question there, Jessica. All right, let's see. I don't see any more questions. So let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 3. Here we're moving into the section called the purpose of giving. Is there someone who would like to read this? You had your hand up? Yeah, go for it.
Is it possible, Venerable Sir, to point out a directly visible fruit of giving? It is siha. A donor siha, a generous giver, is dear and agreeable to many people. This is a directly visible fruit of giving. Again, wholesome persons go in large numbers to a donor, a generous giver. This too is a directly visible fruit of giving. Again, a donor, a generous giver, acquires a wholesome reputation. This too is a directly visible fruit of giving. Again, whatever assembly a donor, a generous giver, approaches, whether of Khatiyas, Brahmins, householders, or aesthetics, he approaches it confidently and composed. This too is a directly visible fruit of giving. Again, with the breakup of the body after death, a donor, a generous giver, is reborn in a good destination in a heavenly world. This is a fruit of giving related to future lives.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So here the Buddha is talking about the directly visible fruit of giving related to future lives, and also this life as well, that he's talking about the benefits of giving. So this first one is a donor, a generous giver, is dear and agreeable to many people. What he's saying is if you practice generosity, you're going to have lots of friends, right? And you can see this to be true. And you shouldn't practice generosity because you want friends, because that's not generosity. That's a craving, desire, attachment. But what the Buddha is helping you to see is this cause and effect, or this action and result. There's students who come here sometimes, and I met them for the first time, and I see them like helping around the temple. I see them like, if there's other people, they'll get them water and take them water. And I see them being all this generous. And I say, you have a lot of friends, don't you? And they're like, yep, sure do. Yep. And they've never even learned the teachings of the Buddha before. But if you know the natural law of karma, you will understand that when you're generous, you're going to have lots of friends, because people are going to be interested to be around you because they see you're sharing your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, and people enjoy being around someone who's generous. So again, don't be generous because you want friends, but what the Buddha is explaining to you is the cause and effect, so that as you are being generous and you see that you have more and more friends around you, you'll understand why, that there's this cause and effect, or this action and result. The second one, he's saying, wholesome persons go in large numbers to a donor, a generous giver. What he's talking about is that you will attract wholesome people, not just people, but wholesome people, people who are into wholesome things, right? So people like ordained practitioners or teachers, right? Because we're going to need to be around people who are supporting us, right? And we're not going to come around you just because you're giving to us. If you didn't give to us, we would still spend time with you and help you to learn the teachings. But if you're practicing generosity with ordained practitioners, with teachers, people who are sharing these teachings, you're going to learn about the wholesome way of getting to enlightenment. So that's what the Buddha is sharing with you, that you're going to experience this wholesomeness of being around you, not just ordained practitioners and teachers, but other people too that are into wholesome things. A donor, a generous giver, acquires a wholesome reputation. What he's talking about here is that in your community, you're going to have a wholesome reputation. Again, you shouldn't practice generosity because that's what you want. Because if you want it, it's a craving, desire, attachment. You need to be able to practice generosity because you understand that it's benefiting your mind, that it's helping enhance the quality of your mind by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. But the Buddha is explaining to you this cause and effect, or this action and result. So you can see the natural law of karma, that as you're practicing generosity because you're working to enhance your mind, then when you start seeing this wholesome reputation in the community around you, my goodness, it's just going to spread and spread and spread. I've heard from students that they've been out in the community and people I've never met before, they're coming here and they're saying, oh, this group over here is talking all about these great things about you and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, who are those people? And I don't even know who those people are. And they were referring to different things about me sharing the teachings, and people in the community know about this and things like this. And I'm just sharing the teachings. That's all I'm doing, is I'm helping people. I don't expect to get this wholesome reputation, but that's what's occurring more and more as I've been teaching longer and longer in this community. The word is spreading, and you'll see the same thing in your community. If you start practicing generosity at work, for example, maybe you go to lunch and you come back and you maybe bring some fruit for your coworkers. You're going to see you do that once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. You're going to see your reputation is going to improve at work. Maybe you bring some bagels or some donuts or things like this to your colleagues at work. You're going to see your reputation's going to grow. Again, not because you're trying to do that. That shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be to enhance the quality of your mind, but you will notice this effect and this benefit. Here, the Buddha is talking about how whether you approach a population of Khatyas, Brahmins, householders, or ascetics, you approach it confidently and composed. What Khatyas are is, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was this population of people who were practicing the teachings very closely without the Buddha having even taught. Because these are the natural laws, people tend to kind of learn about these natural laws in different ways. Like if you look at Christianity or Muslim teachings or even Hindu teachings and other teachings, there's a certain aspect of these natural laws in these actual teachings. So you can have a population of people who are practicing the teachings very closely without having even learned the teachings necessarily, because they've learned them in other ways, not just from the Buddha himself, because they're the natural laws. So here in Thailand, I would say Chiang Mai, people in Chiang Mai are practicing these teachings very, very closely. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was these Khatyas. Brahmin are those Hindu priests that we were talking about, householders or household practitioners, ascetics or are ordained practitioners. So what the Buddha is saying is that if you practice generosity, you will have this confidence and composure when you go around other people. The reason why is because when you're into unwholesome things and you're doing unwise things and you have craving and you have selfishness, you're also going to have guilt and you're going to have shame and you're going to have fear. because of your cravings, your desires, your attachments. It's going to produce these other feelings. But when you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, your mind's becoming more peaceful, more joyful. It's also becoming more calm and more composed and more confident, because you know you're doing wholesome things and you're not doing anything unwise in the community. So when you approach other people, whether it's a group of people who are practicing teachings that are very wholesome, whether it's Hindu priests, whether it's household practitioners, whether it's ordained practitioners, you can be confident because you know you're not doing anything unwise or unwholesome. And when you approach people who are into wholesome things, you know that you're not less of a person. You're not judging yourself and putting yourself above them. You're not putting yourself below them. You can just be confident and composed when you're around people who are into wholesome things. But sometimes when people are into unwholesomeness, when they're around other people who are doing wholesome things, they're kind of shaken up and their mind is uncalm because they know that they're doing unwholesome things. And now when they're around this group of people who are into wholesome things, their mind kind of feels like less of a person. So when you know that you're doing wholesome things, you can have confidence and composure when you're around anybody, no matter who it is. And then this fifth one is the Buddha saying, okay, with the breakup of the body after death, if you're generous, there's this potential to be reborn in the heavenly world. And again, as we shared earlier, this isn't the ultimate goal. But the same things that lead to enlightenment and lead to these other benefits, it also leads to this as well. And the Buddha is just showing you this cause and effect. He's helping you to understand the natural law of karma, that yes, if you practice generosity, there's the potential for an improved rebirth. But the ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. He's just being extensive here. He's being detailed. He's explaining the whole natural law of karma of what does generosity lead to. Well, it leads to those other four things that we were just talking about, but it also leads to this rebirth in the heavenly world or an improved rebirth in the human world as well. And he's just being exhaustive. He's not telling you that this is why you should practice generosity. He's just explaining to you the natural law of cause and effect so you can see the truth for yourself. So any questions on this chapter? Remember, those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. You're welcome, Jessica. Pleased to help you. Okay, no questions here? Okay, I don't see any online either. So let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 4. This is actually very similar to the previous chapter. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just kind of go through this in summary. Here, the Buddha is saying, if you practice generosity, one is dear and agreeable to many people, meaning you have lots of friends, right? He's just showing you the cause and effect. Wholesome persons go in large numbers to you, which is what he was just sharing before. One acquires a wholesome reputation. One is not deficient in householders' duties, and one is potentially reborn in the heavenly world. So it's very similar to the previous one. He's just explaining it a little bit different. Okay, so we don't necessarily need to learn that one. Okay. Oh, and here he also says, that ascetics and Brahmins essentially, or ascetics, monks, people who are into wholesome things and understand the path to enlightenment. He says if you're practicing generosity, there'll be lots of people around you who are sharing the teachings that lead to enlightenment, which means you will then be able to get to enlightenment yourself, that you'll be able to eliminate all discontentedness because generosity is leading to enlightenment. Okay, these are some more benefits here where he's saying, okay, if you practice generosity, having given life, you will then experience improved life. Having given beauty, because when you give food, it's helping to give someone health in their body. That having given food, it gives beauty, so you experience more beauty. That you've given peacefulness, so you experience more peacefulness, and you give strength, so therefore you get more strength. So I think we can overlook that one and kind of move on to some other ones here. These are just all talking about the benefits. This is talking about the benefits of giving medicine, that by giving medicine, there's certain benefits that you experience. So you guys can read these for yourself, actually. But I would like to get to some that aren't necessarily talking about the benefits, but talking about other things. Let's see what else we've got here. This one's talking about wealth, generosity. This one actually, let's see how long it is. This one's 2 pages. Let me see here. Let's end with this one. Is someone who would like to read this one? This is chapter 10. No one would like to read? Would you like to read, Bailan? Yeah, go ahead, read. Let's get Bailan reading. This will be his first time he's ever volunteered to read. You know how to turn on the mic? He usually uses the mics for beatbox. You're gonna give us some beatbox before you read? Yeah, give us some beatbox. Why not?
Wait,
Okay.
which one do I read?
This right here. Oh, you get a clap. Yeah, this whole page.
Okay.
It's just one page.
If beings knew the result of giving and sharing, monks, if beings knew as I know the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor without the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds, even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful. They would not eat without having shared it, if there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. If beings knew what the perfectly enlightened one said, how the results of sharing, such as great fruit, then subduing the stain of selfishness with brightened awareness, they'd give in season to the noble ones where a gift brings great fruit, having given food as an offering to those worthy of offerings. Many donors, when they pass away from here, the human state go to heaven. They, having gone there to heaven, rejoice, enjoying sensual pleasures. Selfish, unselfish, they take part in result of sharing.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. All right. So here what the Buddha is saying is that if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, if there was someone to share it with. What he's saying is that if beings understood how peaceful and joyful it is to get to enlightenment, and the mind being in the enlightened mental state, being so peaceful and joyful, and that it's generosity that is going to lead you to this enlightened mental state, among other things, then there's no situation where you wouldn't share. Even if it was your last bite, even if it was your last mouthful, you would be willing to share this food if you understood how peaceful and how joyful this enlightened mental state is, and that it's generosity that leads to it. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. What he's saying is that because beings don't know how peaceful and joyful the enlightened mental state is, and they don't understand that generosity is what leads to that enlightened mental state, they're selfish. They hold on to things, right? So this is the Buddha helping you to see why it's so important to practice generosity, is because it leads to enlightenment. And there's other places where he teaches this too, but here this is, I think, a very impactful teaching. And he goes on and he shares further. He says, if beings knew what the perfectly enlightened one said, how the results of giving and sharing has such great fruit, meaning the enlightened mind, that it helps you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, then subduing the stain of selfishness with brightened awareness. That's what you experience as your mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment. This brightness and this radiance shines through in the mind, where you can be joyful all the time. You're not even in a bad mood anymore. They'd give in season to the noble ones. What is referring to as the noble ones is during his lifetime, there were certain affluent people who were considered to be noble, and they were wealthy and they were affluent, and they would walk around with their shoulders exposed. They would have a kind of exposed shoulder because they were wealthy, they were affluent, and people thought that if you were born into a rich affluent family that you were going to have a great life and you were a good person. But people thought during the lifetime of the Buddha, before the Buddha started teaching, that if you were born to a poor family, your life was destined to be horrible. And the Buddha was teaching them just the opposite of this. The Buddha was saying, hey, doesn't matter where you're born. If you cultivate wisdom and you train your mind and you make wise decisions in your life, you can become a wonderful person. You can have wonderful things in your life, but it's based on wisdom and growing. So while other people refer to these rich, affluent people as noble, the Buddha referred to anybody who is teaching or learning his teachings deeply, he referred to them as noble. So you could be from a low family and born into poverty. If you started learning with the Buddha, he would have you wear the robes and expose your right shoulder, that you were noble because you were learning the teachings, that he basically flipped society upside down, that this lower caste of people who are considered to be outcast and low and impoverished people, he flipped it upside down. And he said, now you're noble because you're choosing to learn and practice and train your mind, gain wisdom, and now being a wise person, you're now noble. And they would walk around with their shoulder being exposed. So when he's saying making offerings or giving to noble ones, what he's saying is people who are practicing the wise way, the wholesome way, the way that's going to lead to this enlightened mental state. And when you're supporting people who are practicing the teachings, that are practicing them closely, those individuals themselves can get closer and closer to enlightenment. And then the teachings can be shared in the world in order to help other people get to enlightenment. The Buddha taught this mutual support. Here in Thailand, if you go out in the streets in the morning, you'll see the ordained practitioners walking down the street, accepting offerings from the villagers. And they walk down the street, they hold their bowl, and the villagers have an opportunity to practice generosity. It's up to them whether they choose to do that or not. The ordained practitioners, they're not begging for food. They're walking down the street, providing the opportunity for household practitioners to practice generosity if they choose. And now that household practitioner is getting the benefit of eliminating craving, desire, attachment. They're putting some food into the bowl of the monks, or they're putting some money, or they're giving them some clothes or some flowers or something else like this. They're practicing generosity. And now the ordained practitioners are able to, they don't have to go out into the world and have a career. They don't have to work. They don't have to maintain a car. They don't have to go buy clothes and all these other things. It's all provided by the household practitioners. And now they can learn and grow and develop. They can meditate. They can train their mind. They can read books. They can get more and more wisdom. And now what they're supposed to be giving back to the villagers is the wisdom to improve their life, is helping them to learn and grow and develop. So the Buddha built in this mutual support, that household practitioners are practicing generosity in order to give and support the ordained practitioners and teachers. But then the teachers are also practicing generosity by giving the teachings and helping people to gain wisdom, to gain more and more wisdom to improve your life. So there's this mutual support built into the system that the Buddha's created, that ordained practitioners, they're not able to go out and make their own food. They're not supposed to cook. They're not supposed to plant food. They're not supposed to harvest food. They're 100% reliant on household practitioners for their food, their clothing, their water, their shelter, their medical care. Me too. I'm 100% reliant on these things. If I didn't teach, I wouldn't have the resources that I need in order to sustain my life. That's not the reason why I teach. I teach because I have loving kindness and compassion for students. I would like to see you get to more and more enlightened mind, where you can experience the peace and joy of enlightenment, where you can experience relationships, where there's harmonious relationships, where you can have love and kindness and friendliness and respect in all your relationships. You can experience improvement in your life. That's why I teach, because I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. I have loving kindness and compassion. I have concern for your misfortune. But there's this mutual support that by me having let go of my worldly life and now sharing the teachings with you, I'm 100% dependent on people supporting me. So I'm more than interested in supporting students because I would like to see you get closer and closer to enlightenment. But there is kind of this built-in support that if I didn't teach, I wouldn't be able to eat. Right? And the Buddha taught this during his lifetime. This is the way the Buddha lived his life. And this is the way that oftentimes teachers are living their life nowadays too, because we would like to make ourselves fully available to you. Whereas if I had a career, if I was working in a business and I was doing all these other things, I wouldn't have the time to put together these classes. I wouldn't have the time to be able to help you. But any kind of offerings that a student is making to a teacher, you should see something coming back to you. Not that you should expect it, not that you should require it, but you should see the teachings coming back to you. But you should also see a facility that's nice. Carpets, meditation cushions, water, clean bathrooms, the ability to live stream and share the teachings. All these things that you see around you were donated by students. This microphone that I'm talking on, This was purchased by students. The projector was purchased by students. The air conditioning that's here, students purchased this. This building that you're in was purchased by people who practice generosity. The land that we're on right now was based in generosity. Some Thai person at some point owned this land and they donated it to be able to build a temple here. So all of these things that you're experiencing to learn the teachings of the Buddha, it's because people in the past have practiced generosity. So now, as people are learning, you might decide at some point in your journey to enlightenment that you would like to practice generosity to help other people to be able to get access to these teachings. It's not something you're required to do. It's not something that anybody expects you to do, but it might be something you choose to do in order to enhance the quality of your mind, but then also to help other people gain access to the teachings as well. So this is everything that we have to learn today. I'll just open up to any questions that you guys have, whether it's about these chapters or if there's anything else you would like to ask questions about, you're more than welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions here or any questions online? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do to end class is just say thank you to all of you guys for coming to the temple and choosing today as a day that you like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Because as you learn the teachings and you train your mind more, it's going to help you. It's going to help those that are close to you because you're causing less and less harm to them. And it's going to help all of humanity become a more peaceful and loving place. So I really admire people who are interested in growing and developing and doing this inner work to improve your life because it's challenging along the path. But I really admire people who's willing to do that work because you can go around, like I mentioned at the beginning, and constantly blame other people for the difficulties and struggles that you experience, and you'll get nowhere in life. But it's a lot more challenging to focus on your own mind, focus on your own life, cultivate wisdom. But the difference is that you're actually working on the real problem. And because you're working on the real problem, you're going to see real results and experience real improvement and real benefits in your life. So I admire people who are doing this inner work. And that's why I'm here to help you. So whether it's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats, if there's anything that you need to learn this path, I'm here to offer it to you, all at no cost. You're welcome to get any and all help that you like. So feel free to reach out to me, whether it's after class or whether it's an email or message or personal guidance that you would like. You're always welcome to learn any and all the things that I share. So take care. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. As you'd like to learn additional teachings, we have classes tomorrow, which are Sunday. I'm going to be teaching the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha. If you are interested in getting to enlightenment, you would need to learn this teaching. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. I'm going to teach it in a more traditional style of learning, which that's the foundational program starting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We start with meditation, and then I'm going to teach you throughout the morning up until about 10:30 or 11, the core central teaching of the Buddha, and using the original words of the Buddha, but I'll be teaching it to you in a more traditional way. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students and then opening up to any and all questions that you have. So thank you for coming, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap, Bailan. All right. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.